Zara and Farid shared a secret that no one could have imagined. But what began as a forbidden affair between a wealthy Dubai wife and a humble ice cream truck driver spiraled into a chilling tragedy that ended inside a freezer, leaving the city stunned and investigators racing against time. Zara's life in Dubai appeared perfect to everyone who looked from the outside. She lived in a luxurious high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the sparkling skyline and the Persian Gulf beyond. Her husband, a wealthy businessman, had built a life of comfort and privilege around her, and she had everything money could buy: designer clothes, fine dining, and trips to the most exclusive resorts. But behind the gloss of wealth, Zara felt a gnawing emptiness. Her husband's constant absences left her alone for weeks at a time, and the walls of their opulent apartment began to feel more like a gilded cage than a home. The routines of wealth, champagne dinners, gallery openings, and social events could no longer distract her from the loneliness and quiet despair that lingered in the empty rooms. One sweltering afternoon, Zara noticed a man who worked as a local ice cream truck driver, making his rounds in the neighborhood. There was something unremarkable yet strangely magnetic about him. Farid's truck would appear at the same time every day, parked just outside the apartment complex. Children would gather around, laughing and chattering as he served them colorful cones and cups of ice cream. He was cheerful and easygoing, always smiling, and there was a warmth to his presence that Zara found oddly comforting. Initially, she watched him from her balcony, keeping her distance, enjoying the simple humanity of someone living a life so different from hers. Yet, over time, those small glimpses became a kind of escape from her gilded prison. Their first brief interaction was innocent enough. Zara had approached the truck to buy ice cream, a simple craving, nothing more. Farid had smiled and offered her a cone, striking up small talk about the weather, the neighborhood, and the children he served daily. His easy charm and laughter were a stark contrast to the rigid formality of her own life. That single interaction planted a seed of intrigue in Zara, a curiosity she couldn't ignore. Over the next few days, she found herself seeking him out, making excuses to be near the truck, observing him from a distance, imagining conversations she would never actually have. What started as casual fascination slowly evolved into a quiet obsession. Each encounter became a small thrill, a brief rebellion against the suffocating monotony of her life. Zara's internal conflict grew with each passing day. She knew the risks, understood the scandal that could follow, but the pull toward Farid was irresistible. She began thinking of ways to see him without being noticed, timing her appearances at the truck just right, making sure her husband was away on business. She started noticing small details: the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the way he handled children with patience and care, the sincerity in his gestures. Every tiny moment fed her longing, making her feel alive in a way she hadn't for years. Her life of luxury now seemed hollow in comparison to the simple warmth of this man she barely knew. There was a dangerous thrill in the secrecy, a spark of life she feared but craved all at once. The world outside Dubai's towers went on as usual, but for Zara, a chain of choices had already begun. A path that would lead her far from safety and into a dark, unpredictable future. The secret between Zara and Farid grew with a slow, dangerous rhythm. Their meetings were never planned in the open. They took place in quiet corners of the city, in shaded parks, behind small shops, and in alleys that only he knew. Each encounter carried a thrill that both excited and frightened her. Farid's carefree nature clashed sharply with her life of wealth and rules, and that contrast drew her in even more. He laughed easily, spoke simply, and moved through life without the constant calculation that governed her every action. For Zara, it was intoxicating to be with someone who lived so freely, even if it was only for a few stolen hours at a time. As the relationship deepened, tension began to grow. Farid was no longer just charming. He began demanding more attention, insisting on more frequent meetings, and showing signs of possessiveness. Zara found herself caught between the excitement of their secret and the fear of being discovered. Every interaction was a careful balance. She had to appear normal in public, maintain her composure at home, and yet respond to the magnetic pull of Farid. Each day, the weight of secrecy grew heavier, pressing down on her like a storm she could not see coming. Farid's mood swings added a layer of danger that Zara had not anticipated. One moment, he was tender and playful, sharing small jokes and laughter. The next, he became suspicious, questioning where she had been, who she had spoken to, and why she seemed distracted. Zara tried to reassure him silently, offering herself in words unspoken, but she could sense the tension rising. It was not just fear for her safety that gripped her. It was the realization that she was walking on a razor's edge, that one wrong move could shatter everything. The city around them bustled, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing in a shadowed relationship. The contrast between their worlds could not have been greater. Zara had grown up in comfort and stability, where rules and appearances mattered above all else. Farid lived with freedom but scarcity, navigating life day by day. Yet it was his simplicity that mesmerized her. She began rationalizing choices she never would have considered before, allowing herself to meet him even when she knew the risks. The danger itself became a kind of allure, a secret pulse that quickened her heartbeat every time they met. Every glance, every fleeting touch carried weight, as if they both understood the fragile line they were crossing. Rumors and whispers in the neighborhood began to make Zara nervous. People noticed her slipping away at odd hours, watching as the ice cream truck came and went. She began to fear judgment, not only from strangers but from her own conscience. Still, the pull of their secret relationship was stronger than fear. Each encounter reinforced the pattern. Excitement, risk, and desire intertwined with a subtle threat of danger. The city, with its endless sun and towering buildings, seemed indifferent to their lives. Yet for Zara, every moment of freedom with Farid was shadowed by the knowledge that this thrill could end in disaster. The relationship was no longer just an escape. It was a trap she could feel closing around her, and she had no idea how or when it might snap shut. The day began like any other, with the Dubai sun casting its golden glare over the city's skyscrapers and bustling streets. Zara had arranged to meet Farid near one of his usual spots, a quiet alley where the truck was parked, away from the prying eyes of neighbors and pedestrians. At first, everything seemed normal. The familiar hum of the truck's engine, the scent of freshly made cones, and Farid's easy smile welcoming her as he always did. But there was tension beneath the surface, a silent storm that neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Both knew that the stakes were higher than ever. Farid's demands had grown, and Zara's fear of exposure had deepened. Their relationship, once thrilling, had started to feel like a delicate game of survival. The argument began subtly, a flicker of frustration that quickly ignited into a heated exchange. Farid demanded more attention than Zara could give, his voice low but firm, tinged with desperation. He accused her of being distant, of withholding herself, and of failing to prioritize their secret. Zara tried to reason silently, feeling cornered by the intensity of his expectations. Each word, each gesture, seemed magnified in the small space of the alley. There was no witness, no interruption, only the close walls of the truck, the faint hum of traffic in the distance, and the unbearable heat that pressed down on them both. What began as frustration escalated into anger, a dangerous and unpredictable force. In a moment of panic and confusion, the situation spiraled out of control. Farid, who had always seemed playful and easygoing, acted with sudden aggression. His hands moved too quickly, his grip too tight, and Zara, caught off guard, could not escape. The small freezer in the truck, used for storing ice cream, became the site of her final moments. The cold metal door slammed shut, the interior offering no hope, only suffocating chill and silence. The act was over in minutes, but its consequences would last forever. Farid stood there, trembling with shock, staring at what he had done, realizing that there was no reversing the moment. The thrill, the secret, the passion, all had culminated in a single fatal decision. Fear gripped him instantly. His mind raced as he considered the consequences. Discovery, arrest, and a life destroyed. Every instinct he had learned over years of hard work and survival screamed at him to cover his tracks, to make the scene look normal. He moved with calculated precision, hiding evidence, wiping surfaces, and returning the truck to its usual routine as if nothing had happened. Customers came and went, oblivious to the horror that had occurred just moments before. Farid's outward calm was a thin mask over the panic that churned inside him. By evening, Zara's absence began to register, though no one yet suspected the truth. Her phone went unanswered, messages remained unread, and small signs of her disappearance started to accumulate. Meanwhile, Farid attempted to blend into the city's rhythm, careful to avoid suspicion. He walked the streets as if nothing had happened, yet each step reminded him of the weight of his actions. Every glance, every passerby became a potential threat. What had started as a secret affair now hung over him like a shadow, a chilling reminder that passion unchecked by caution could lead to deadly consequences. The investigation began quietly at first, almost imperceptibly, like a ripple across the city's surface. Zara's sudden disappearance alarmed friends and family, who had grown used to her carefully curated life of routine and comfort. Texts went unanswered, phone calls went straight to voicemail, and attempts to reach her through social media yielded no response. Her absence could no longer be explained by a business trip or a social engagement. The concern that had once been mild now became urgent. Investigators were called in, tasked with piecing together the last known movements of a woman who had seemingly vanished into thin air. Surveillance footage quickly became a central piece of evidence. Cameras outside Zara's apartment captured her leaving at unusual hours, walking briskly toward the location where Farid's ice cream truck was often parked. Traffic cameras and nearby shop security footage filled in small details, like the fleeting moments when she approached the truck or glanced over her shoulder. Each frame seemed ordinary on its own, but when investigators combined them, a pattern emerged. A series of private meetings that hinted at a relationship that no one had suspected. The detectives began to see her life not just as the luxurious routine everyone admired, but as a web of secret encounters and hidden choices. Farid became a person of interest almost immediately. At first, his calm demeanor and polite cooperation seemed reassuring. He answered questions without hesitation, explained his routes, and appeared to have nothing to hide. But the trained eyes of the investigators noticed subtle inconsistencies. His account of where he had been and what he had done that afternoon did not always match the digital trail left by phones and cameras. Small details, like minor deviations in the truck's routes or the timing of his stops, added up to something suspicious. His charm, which had once disarmed those around him, now felt rehearsed, almost calculated. Digital forensics uncovered fragments of deleted messages, location data, and timestamps that contradicted Farid's statements. Attempts to remove or hide the evidence had left tiny but crucial traces. Investigators reconstructed sequences of movements that pointed directly toward the moments when Zara had last been seen. Even environmental evidence, such as the unusual arrangement of the ice cream truck and the faint traces left inside the freezer, began to suggest that something far more sinister had occurred than a simple disappearance. The puzzle was coming together piece by piece, and each discovery increased the pressure on Farid, even if he did not realize it yet. As the investigation intensified, the city seemed to shift around him. Casual passers-by, customers, and colleagues became potential threats, any of them capable of noticing something he had missed. Anxiety began to creep into his carefully maintained routine. The very streets that had once felt familiar now seemed full of eyes, cameras, and surveillance. Each question asked by police, each photograph examined, narrowed the distance between concealment and exposure. For Farid, the secret that had begun as an illicit thrill was now a ticking clock. The law was closing in, and the freezer that had once been a refuge for ice cream had become a silent witness to a crime that could no longer remain hidden. The investigation moved rapidly once the evidence was pieced together. Forensic teams analyzed the ice cream truck, uncovering traces that linked Farid to Zara's disappearance. DNA evidence, fingerprints, and subtle signs inside the freezer left no room for doubt. Investigators reconstructed the timeline with precision, showing the last moments of Zara's life and Farid's movements afterward. Each discovery added weight to a mounting case, and law enforcement began to see the full scope of what had happened. The thrill and secrecy that had once defined the illicit affair now stood exposed in the harsh light of truth. Farid's arrest was swift and public. The man who had once been a friendly presence in the neighborhood, whose laughter had charmed children and parents alike, was taken into custody in front of his ice cream truck. Shock rippled through the community. People struggled to reconcile the friendly, harmless image they had of him with the reality of a deadly crime. Neighbors whispered in disbelief, questioning how a man who had seemed so ordinary could commit such a horrific act. Social media exploded with speculation, and the story drew attention far beyond the city, capturing headlines across the country and around the world. Dubai, known for its wealth, innovation, and glamour, was confronted with a crime that exposed the darkness lurking beneath a seemingly perfect facade. During the trial, every detail of the case was laid bare. Investigators described the secret meetings, the growing tension, and the fatal confrontation in the ice cream truck. Evidence was presented in meticulous detail, showing how the crime had been planned and concealed. Farid's behavior before and after the incident was scrutinized, revealing a chilling mixture of panic, calculation, and denial. Witness testimony, surveillance footage, and forensic analysis combined to construct a narrative that was impossible to ignore. The courtroom was tense, as the story of desire, obsession, and deadly consequence unfolded for all to see. The prosecution emphasized the contrast between Zara's quiet life of privilege and Farid's modest existence, highlighting how the imbalance of power, secrecy, and impulsive emotion led to tragedy. The defense attempted to frame the crime as an accident born of argument and stress, but the consistency and depth of the evidence left little room for doubt. The jury reached a verdict that reflected the gravity of the act and the breach of moral and social responsibility. Farid was found guilty, and the sentence underscored the severity of the crime, sending a clear message about accountability and the consequences of allowing desire to override judgment. In the aftermath, Dubai grappled with the shocking details of the case. The community reflected on how appearances can be deceiving and how easily ordinary lives can be disrupted by secret passions. Zara's family mourned deeply, her memory preserved not in scandal, but as a cautionary tale of vulnerability and betrayal. The ice cream truck, once a symbol of joy and simple pleasures, became a haunting reminder of human weakness and impulsive violence. The story served as a grim lesson. Hidden desires, unchecked emotions, and careless decisions can turn everyday life into a tragedy, leaving scars that linger long after the crime is over. The truth had emerged, but the cost had been devastating, and the echoes of that day would be remembered for years to come.